let's say that there was abandonment. You would get one like this. Okay, so let's just say that it's abandoned. The theme is abandonment. And rejection, that's what the client comes in with. And in this life, so I made it into verbs. In this life, they describe that their parents were both alcoholic. They had no capacity for loving them and so forth. And of course, in their relationships when they were growing up, all their best friends left them. Their spouse left them, their girlfriends or boyfriends left them. This pattern of being abandoned or rejected. And we're going back to the primary root cause of this, to that sanskara for that field, okay, that energetic signature. I'm not worthy of being loved. I can never have an enduring relationship. I can't trust people that say they love me. All those. If you've done this work for a little while, those are common statements. I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. So you're back there and you say, in the regression, we'll go back to the root cause, just describe your awareness when the next 1, 2, 3, and they're back and it's 3 years old and their parents are fighting and beating each other up and they're in terror. They don't think they can survive and the mom is in jeopardy. She may be killed by the father and all that. Then the relationships they have in that life, this life, relationships were replication of that causal life in this model. So then, eventually, by being in the events in that life and feeling them and deepening into the feelings and the feeling awareness, is so important. I can't underline it enough. If you don't do that, do it, and then do it more. And a simple tool for that is the client is in an experience, let's say, that just learning they're 5 years old and their parents were killed in the war, and like that, and they're having feelings of lost. Who will care for us? There's no one that can love us. There's no safety in the world. And you say, now in the body, how are you noticing what you're feeling in the heart and the throat and the belly? And they say, well, I just feel this hole in my heart and all this anxiety in my stomach. And then you say, okay, now ask your higher self to magnify your awareness of that feeling in the heart, the hole in the heart. And something more always comes. More insight comes. Like, I can never be loved. I can never, like more beliefs that are associated with that experience start to show up. Okay? So all this is processing that's happening, and then, so we go through that life and then into the death experience. Death is often very critical. It's a very stable thing here. You know what that means. That's death, right? Okay. So also the death experience, there can be critical events that take place after that, let alone in it. Always feeling as much as possible in that. Sometimes very difficult emotional experiences take place upon leaving the body that the person was not allowing themselves to have awareness of while in the body. Anyhow, so then we go, when they process that, now all of this does not address spirit attachment. That's a whole, it's another story entirely. But as you know, it's often a critical element in in past lives, let alone in this one. Why would it be any different? So then they come into the interlife and the heaven worlds, and you want to make sure, of course, that they have an awareness of the presence of light in some way that indicates clearly to you that they've gotten there. Otherwise, of course, you're working with, if they never go there, then you're working with somebody else and not your client. You know, that's a spirit releasement principle. And so anyhow, they are in the light, and they talk about being welcomed and by people they've never seen before, and you know. And I have one client. He always goes to what he calls, it's the Akashic Library, but he calls it the Newton Library, after the scientist, you know, because it looks like that to him. And then eventually, I will get directive all of a sudden. Instead of being supportive at now, what do you experience, what's it like, describe it for me. Now I say, when I count to 3, you'll be in the review period. In the review period, at least what I've seen is that the review period is not just where they look at that life, and where you can also access vision of other lifetimes and other elements around that in the relationship. But this is where the distilling process takes place, where the soul ends up with their conclusions for that life that they carry forward as sanskaras into other lifetimes. Okay? Is this new to anybody or old? Or in between?
It's new to me.
Okay. All right, good. So in the review is where I bring in a divine presence in some way. There's a teacher that I work with, and his name is Elijah, and he goes by the label of Heart of Elijah because his presence is very heart-filled and pink. And so let's say that the person in this who was abandoned and rejected is in this field, and they're reviewing it, and there are all these great beings in the white light hanging out in the review room, and often there's a table, and common experiences held by people in regression. And all the other beings that are around are going, you really did a good job. It's not your fault what happened. You took it personally. You didn't have to feel abandoned and rejected. It doesn't matter. They still go, but I was. They're still carrying that, and they carry it into this life. So, but there are those around who are bright and say, no, you just need to turn it like that and you'll be okay. And they're going, I still feel this and it was my fault and so forth, and I'm not worthy of being loved. So there's this residue that eventually goes on to the soul, who knows time frame wise, prior to the next incarnation, that's carried forward until that soul addresses it in some other way, has another opportunity to learn and to heal, come into forgiveness of self, and others, all those things. So into this place, I bring divine presence. This is where one major area, and it's the same thing as the core transformation principle. We're bringing a higher state into that child that I described. This time I use Elijah to come in because he's so good at this. And when there's a stuck place, the impact of his presence, and someday we'll all learn how to do this, is that he causes it to be kind of turned inside out, and the person may go, there's a pause usually, like 10 seconds, a minute, a few minutes. You just sit and wait and watch the client transform. Their whole visage, everything shifts and changes, and they get soft, their coloring changes, and they say, oh, I've really been selfish about this. Oh, and I blamed my parents, and it wasn't their fault. But they're having this realization in here. It's not something in the head. It's an experience they're having. So then I have fun, okay? I'm sorry? Well, it is fun because they don't know, but I do what's going to happen next. And most of the time I don't know, okay? So after the review period, they're still in the interlife, and